Guys, welcome back to another episode. So, I guess Happy New Year. But today I want to talk about this BYD incident that happened in Brazil, and this happened, I think, a few weeks ago. They've got investigators now there, investigating this case. So, what happened? This Chinese company BYD had um, they were building a factory, and then they used contractors which were also a Chinese company. I'm pretty sure it's kind of related with BYD, but it's a contractor that builds the factory, the initial stages, I guess, maybe the groundworks or something of the factory. And the Brazilian labor department, I think, Minister of the, I don't know what it is. Maybe is it Minister of the Fazenda or something else? Anyways, it's the Labor Department, and also a couple other departments. They basically found that BYD was exporting slavery, treating these Chinese workers that were working in Brazil temporarily as slaves, and they were really terrible situations. Those workers, right? So you had you had workers who had to share a bathroom with 32 people. They were saying, who slept in a bunk bed without mattresses, without maybe without air conditioning, because Bahia, the location of the factory in Bahia, is very hot in Brazil, especially right now. I would say December, but in Bahia is very, very hot. I think if you think Rio is hot in December, Bahia is much hotter, I think, than Rio. And the place is called something. I forgot the name of the location, but I think it's somewhere inland, not on the coast of Bahia. So I haven't been to Bahia, but it's actually one of the poorest states in Brazil. If you think about Brazil, the richest states, São Paulo, Rio, they're quite rich, biggest cities in Brazil. And then you have the south and three states. You have Paraná, you have Santa Catarina, and then you have those Gaucho states. They are all very fairly wealthy as well. So Bahia is one of the poorest states in Brazil. I would say these days even Goiás, which is in the inland, is much wealthier than Bahia. A lot of people are moving from Bahia to Goiás. So the reason why they choose Bahia maybe is, I'm pretty sure it's down to the fact that it's cheap, and there's Chinese companies, they only want to save cost. That's the only concern really. Make it as cheap as possible, set it up as cheap as possible. Had they been setting up in São Paulo, it would be much more expensive. But on the other hand, in São Paulo, you have much more bigger auto manufacturing industry. So I visited the Hyundai factory in inland São Paulo, which is near Campinas. You had a couple other factories there, Japanese, Korean manufacturers mostly, and yeah, though São Paulo state is one of the biggest manufacturer of automobiles. And then you have that corridor with Rio in the middle, Central Dedos campus, and across the that mountain range, in the middle between the two mountain ranges, you have some industry there. Bahia very poor, and no wonder they chose Bahia, because the cost must be very low. And this story is about they're exploiting, they're exporting slavery to Brazil. So these workers, they're working 20 hours a day. I think someone said that they woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning, 4:30 a.m. just to go to the bathroom, because there's not enough bathrooms to share with 32 other people. So they need to be working early, and then they work 10, 12 hours a day, very tired, and then they go back to sleep. These workers basically they're working like machines. they're yeah, they're treated very bad. But what really surprised me about this story is two other things. And number one is, who the heck is the CEO of BYD Brazil? Man, this CEO, does he not even know? Você não sabe como é Brazil? You don't know how Brazil is, man. Like, this is the basics. This story is like the fundamental schoolboy era, you know. I mean, like, if you've been to Brazil, you know how it is, like how the labor are very much protected. It's even much more left, I would say. Maybe left is not the right word. Labor is much more protected than even in America. You know, you have to pay very complicated. Brazil is one of the highest, the most complicated tax countries in the world. On top of that, there's a lot of social security taxes you have to pay. And also there's a lot of conditions. So for example, you got proper lunch breaks. You got all these kind of things. You cannot work for over certain hours. The very labor friendly country in Brazil. Now some might say it's a very bad thing because that pushes the cost up. And there's actually a famous term which is in Brazil called custo Brasil, which is because if you do something in Brazil, it's gonna cost a lot. So why manufacture in Brazil? Why not manufacture in China? So this China and Brazil is actually the opposite of ends of the spectrum. China is like, let's exploit these people. Let's exploit the labor force. And Brazil is like, you know, let's treat them well. Let's treat them with respect. Let's treat them as humans. So you can't be more wrong than, you know, not knowing this difference. Like, this is the fundamental difference. And even this difference is mostly rooted down to Catholicism, right? In other Southern European countries, you also see that, for example, Spain, Portugal, Italy, you see a lot of protectionism. So you don't have the liberalism you see in the Anglosphere. Brazil is very protected. The CEO of Brazil, the BYD Brazil, I don't know what the heck is she thinking. Maybe she hasn't been in Brazil long enough to know that. I mean, come on. Like, even if you go there for a year or two, you would have known that. And my guess is this isn't even decided at CEO regional level. When it's decided at BYD Shenzhen level and headquarters level. So they want to build a factory in. They want to get first, number one. They want to make money in Brazil. Brazil is BYD's largest market. But also, they want it cheap. They want it to be done as cheap as possible. So they're exploiting these, exporting and exploiting these Chinese workers who are sent there. Now, they don't treat the Brazilian workers that way. Why? Because they know if Brazilian workers, they treat them like that, that's not gonna work. No worker is gonna work like that in Brazil, right? They can just go to another factory, not somewhere else. You see, this is the main difference. This is why people don't respect Chinese people at the end of the day, because it's just embarrassing. These people are the reason why Chinese people are not liked anywhere in the world, right? So you see, it's not only that, it's not only in Brazil, it's everywhere. You see, you go to Africa, you go to other Latin American countries, right, where they can get away with things, they do it. They get away with it. Even in other countries like in Europe, they are exploiting people. It's just that they're not exploiting others as a bigger scale. And I'll tell you a story I had in later. So the other thing that shocked me was like, how the heck these workers actually, they wanted to be slaves, you know? They don't mind the conditions. They don't mind, because guess what? And they actually did a video about what the condition was like trying to defend themselves, trying to defend BYD and the contractor, saying, "Oh no, we're not forced. We're not. We're doing voluntarily, and they took our passports because they were doing something with documents. But then later on, they turned out that they didn't even have a CPF, which is a tax code that you need to be in Brazil to do anything. Yeah." So they were actually defending the company and lying for the company sometimes, and so they're saying, oh, these whatever the excuses, they were accused of, oh, they were doing this, oh, they were doing that, trying to defend the company. And why are they doing this or defending? It's because, guess what, if they go back to China and they said bad thing about this BYD, the BYD gets rid of them right now, guess what, they're not even gonna make money in Brazil, right? The purpose of them being in Brazil is to make money, and they clearly know the conditions, and they pretty much knows, I would assume, I would guess, because that's how it is in China. That's how the exploitative it is in China, in some of the factories. You haven't seen how people are working in those BYD, some of the factories in Shenzhen these days, where there's Shen, where there's what's the other company called, Timo, they're working 24/7 to, slave labor. It's all slave labor. They're knitting the clothes 24/7, right? So these guys, they already know the situation, and it's like, they're actually trying to defend the company, because if they get fired, for example, if BYD gets rid of them, and then they go back to China, guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna probably slip under a bridge, They're probably gonna have to go back to their farmer lifestyle, and they're not gonna earn money. So their purpose is get some money and get. This is the same as when back in the day, when the government was developing the bigger cities. These people are called 农民工, which is countryside workers. So they come to the cities, they go build bridges, and they work exactly like that. So there we go. That's how it's different, because in Brazil, no one works like that.